Hello, and allow me to be the first to welcome you to another fantastic installment of our DM Connect webinar series. We're very pleased to have current dental monitoring users and non-users alike, doctors, residents, and team members, all registered for today's presentation. I see that we have registrations from 29 states in the United States, and we also welcome our international guests from 13 different countries around the globe. So thank you all, as always, for making this webinar series truly a global event. My name is Sean Pemberton, Professional Education Manager for Dental Monitoring North America, and I will be your moderator for today's session, which will be led by Dr. Tara Gostovich, joining us from her practice in Marlborough, New Jersey, entitled "The Combination of Digital Custom Brackets and Dental Monitoring, a Win-Win for Your Practice." But before I introduce today's presenter, please note that all participant lines have been muted. But if you have a question you'd like to submit, please feel free at any time to enter your question in the chat provided, and we will address as many questions as time allows at the conclusion of the presentation. The session will be recorded in its entirety, and an on-demand version will be available using the same link you received following registration. She might start her day with a quick stop at her local Wawa, a staple of the suburban New Jersey landscape. But when she walks into TG Ortho, Dr. Tara Gostovich and her team change lives, deliver amazing care, and a fully digital treatment experience for her patients. Digital technology, automation, and artificial intelligence is a part of all of our lives, and we experience more of its impact every day. And transitioning an orthodontic practice to a fully digital experience is not an overnight process, and it takes time and a team totally open and committed to change. Within the last few years, we've seen an introduction of digital custom brackets and digital braces workflows, which bring numerous benefits, but so many of these benefits can be magnified when a digital treatment solution is combined with remote monitoring of treatment. And today's presenter, Dr. Tara Gostovich, will outline how combining these technologies can change how your communication, scheduling, systems, workflows, and your practice can change for the better. And we're very honored to have her as a dental monitoring advocate and key opinion leader. And I now turn the presentation over to Dr. Tara Gostovich.
Hello, and thank you, Sean, and thank you, Dental Monitoring, for having me today, and thank you to all those who have tuned in for your time. Dental monitoring is brand agnostic. It does not show preference towards one aligner system or one bracket system over another. It pairs well with any system we use, and even with no system at all in the case of monitoring our hygiene or observation patients. But today, I'm going to discuss how my practice chooses to implement remote monitoring with our Lightforce digital braces patients. I'm a solo practitioner. I practice in Marlborough, New Jersey, which is about 1 hour south of New York City and about 20 miles from the beach. I did my undergraduate training at, I went to school at Rutgers School of Business. And then about 4 years later, I decided to go back to dental school, and I did my dental school training at what's now Rutgers Dental School and my ortho specialty training at the University of Pennsylvania. My practice offers patients a highly digital treatment experience through a fully digital workflow. We offer Lightforce 3D printed custom braces, Invisalign, dental monitoring, and we use 3D printed appliances for our expanders or space maintainers or anything else that we need to use. Even if it's not something you can recognize in the moment, I think we all know that the rhythm of life is orientation, disorientation, reorientation. And it took the disorientation of a global pandemic and the loss of half of my employees to break open my way of thinking and allow me to become open to the possibilities for how I offer treatment in my office. The disorientation was a great instigator for my move to a fully digital workflow. Employees no longer wanted to come in to the office to work, and patients were afraid to come in for care. So we did more with less by bringing the care to them via remote monitoring and finishing treatment in less time with customized treatment options. At the end of today's webinar, attendees will be able to learn the why and how my practice transitioned from a traditional bracket system to a digital custom bracket system. You can gain insight into the clinical advantages of combining a digital custom bracket with remote monitoring, and gain a broader perspective on how to use the features such as real-time communication, dental monitoring treatment goals, and dental monitoring insights to fully optimize the digital braces experience beyond simply reducing treatment time and total visits. My journey to a digital workflow looked a little like this. So we always offered Invisalign to our patients. And then before the pandemic hit, we had an employee attrition. I lost half of my staff. I went from 12 employees down to 6. And some we were happy for, they left for good reasons, and some we were happy to lose. So coming out of the pandemic, we were down to 6 employees, and we started doing dental monitoring right away in May of 2020. And then in September of 2020, I first heard about Lightforce, and that became the only braces system we offered. In the summer of 2021, Goals came out with dental monitoring, and that created a significant change in my workflow. And that's important to understand. Using remote monitoring and not changing your workflow is just work. So when you make the move to remotely monitoring your patients, you can still see them on that same workflow, or you've just added work and you're not going to reap the benefits of growth and production. For example, with our braces patients, we cut out all of the check appointments. We don't schedule appointments to check anything. We don't schedule appointments to check elastics or arch wire leveling or retainers. We do all of that remotely. If the AI can help me see these things, then there's no need for me to bring the patient into the office to routinely check something. So we were able to stop scheduling these appointments and open up more scheduling time for production. So that's an abbreviated version of my journey, but on to yours. And before we begin, I want to offer just a word or two of encouragement to anyone who's trying to figure out how to bring a more digital experience to your patients and to your team. In the famous words of Martin Luther King, you don't need to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. And I mention this because I've met a lot of doctors who have a lot of questions. They want to know about the how. How do you implement it? How does the separation of power work in your office? How do you get the patients to buy in? How do you get your staff on board? And the truth is, it will be different for every practice. It will be customized by you to work in your hands with your staff and your practice culture. There isn't just one way to do remote monitoring. My dental monitoring coordinator is a clinical assistant, but Dr. Barry Benton's DMC is a remote employee who doesn't even work in the office with him when he's treating patients. So just make the decision and the rest will follow. Remote monitoring is dynamic. You are not locked in to one way to deliver care. You can make changes. You can add protocols as you go, and you can remove them if they no longer serve your patients. So all that to say that I will tell you how we deliver digital care in my office, and you might want to do something totally different, and that's perfectly fine. With regards to the agenda for the next hour, since we all know that the only constant is change, I figured today we would talk about how so many things will change with the move to remotely monitoring your digital braces patients. So we'll start off with communication and how your communication will change both with your staff and your patients. I'll touch on dental monitoring goals and how setting goals can help you change your scheduling. We'll touch on DM insights and how your systems will change. And lastly, I'll touch on practice transformation, how your practice can change. So I'm going to start with communication. Providing digital care with remote monitoring will change your communication with your team, as I said, as well as your patients. And I think the automated team instructions are a basic necessity of remote monitoring. These instructions are pre-programmed to cover basic things, so anyone on my team can cover the notifications if my DNC is out of the office. As the doctor, I can rely on the fact that a team member won't misinterpret my instructions because they are predetermined. And this creates a habit of the appropriate actions to take without needing to clarify anything, and thereby promotes autonomy and patient safety. These pre-programmed messages can be changed as you evolve with DM and develop your own way of interacting with it. Team instructions improve our communications with our patients because they will receive similar feedback no matter who is responding to the notification. So this provides patients with consistency as they go through treatment. This is just a quick list of some of our team instructions. This instruction to notify doctor with the little swirly lights, I wish an alarm sounded as well, is what comes up whenever there's a notification about a missing bite ramp. And this is extremely important to know in real time when I'm treating patients with light force brackets, because they have a really high ability to wear down the enamel. So when the notification, when the instruction comes to notify doctor, whoever is looking at the notification will then assign that notification to me, and I'll see it in the dashboard. Once I see the notification, I can see which bite ramp is missing. I can open up the scan and evaluate if there is any risk for enamel wear from the loss of that ramp. And there is that most unholy noticing of wear on the enamel edge. But seeing that on the upper right one allows me to bring the patient in. And I chose to switch his bite ramps from posterior bite ramps to anterior bite ramps before any significant incisal wear occurred. After I made the decision to see the patient in the office, I assigned the notification to the front desk, asking them to schedule an appointment for the patient to come in, and instructed them on what we would be doing at that visit. So the internal communication was the DMC saw the notification and the automated instruction to notify doctor. She assigned it to me. I made a decision and reassigned it to the front desk with instructions on what to bring the patient in for. And no one even had to talk to each other. We didn't even have to be in the office together to handle this situation. It's quick and it's seamless. So without remotely monitoring my braces patients and the use of team instructions, I feel like I would lose the ability to address an important issue in real time. In this case, my fear is that there could be significant wear by the time the patient comes back in for their next adjustment, especially since the appointment intervals are longer due to the custom prescription for each light force patient. The next great way I love communicating with my braces patients is through annotated photos. Annotated photos give us the ability to give custom feedback to our patients about anything we see in the scan. So you can instruct your patient on how you want them to change their elastic position or show them where they can improve their brushing. I really love having the ability to give elastic instructions from evaluating the scan, because you can do it on the fly as you see the bite changing, and you can push out the patient's adjustment intervals because you can remotely monitor those changes. Sometimes we send patients home with different strength elastics, and we tell them that we'll let them know when we want them to go to the stronger rubber band. This prevents the need for an additional appointment to check elastics, and the patient doesn't lose time because they're stuck in a lighter elastic longer than we want them in that. So this is just an example. It says, "Hi, Caroline, great job scanning and wearing your rubber bands. I want you to change up how you're wearing the rubber bands starting today or tonight after school. On the right side, you can stop wearing the box elastic and start wearing the rubber band how I drew it in the picture above. Wear this new diagonal elastic full-time on the right, and you can stop wearing the elastic on the left side for now. If you have any questions, you can message me back. Hope you had a great spring break, and today is an easy Monday back at school. See you soon, Dr. Tara. Oh yeah, and you can switch from the light to medium elastics for this new way to wear the rubber bands." If there's a change in elastic wear, we need to communicate that internally as well as to the patient. So we use the note tabs, and this is where we enter the new instructions and we date it. When a patient comes into the office, my staff knows they have to check the note tabs in DM for each patient, because that's where any recent changes will be found. That the way they were instructed at their last visit may not in fact be the way they're wearing them when they come back in. Of course, we also use annotated photos to offer coaching tips on where our patients can improve their brushing efforts. And I say, without seeing these scans every week, you really don't understand the struggle that your braces patients have with maintaining good oral hygiene. And we can always send these photos to the referring dentist and let them know that the patient broke up with their toothbrush and we're desperately trying to get them back together. But my experience with keeping the dentist in the loop with some of these pictures has been really positive, because then the dentist knows that we're watching oral hygiene closely and we have much more insight into oral hygiene than we ever used to. And that's a service to the patient as well as the referring dentist. Lastly, we try not to forget the love. We make sure that we're sending personal messaging and not just automated messaging. We send our braces patients customized video messages that address where they may be struggling. Due to the LightForce customization, we're not seeing our patients in the office as frequently. So it helps us keep in touch with the patient and it lets them see a friendly face between visits.
Hi, Anastasia, it's Jess from Dr. Gostovich's office. We are concerned about your brushing. As you can see on your last scan, you are missing some spots down here. It looks like there's some food left in your brackets. Up here, it looks like you have some puffiness to your gums. So I just wanted to demo with you how you should be using your toothbrush. So it's really important you brush 3 times a day, 2 minutes each time. And when you're brushing, along with getting everywhere, you want to get up along your gum line. So soft circle brushing up here will help prevent the puffiness. On the bottom, it's really important to you're angling your brush up towards the brackets just to get all of that food out. Okay. Like I said, that's along with getting everywhere else. You want to kind of focus towards the front because it looks like that's where you're having the most trouble with brushing. You could also use these proxy brushes. So they're really helpful. It just goes right underneath your wire and anything that's stuck in there will come out. So you can kind of see how in here you have some food stuff. So if you just use the proxy brush, that'll make it nice and easy to get it out. One other thing is the platypus flossers. So if you're flossing at least 1 time a day, it'll help reduce the puffiness. So with these, they just go right underneath your wire and then you can floss. Okay. So just try to work on that and then we'll see you at your next scan.
As long as the parents also download the app, they can also see video messages or annotated photos that you send to the patient. If the parents don't have the app, the only thing they can see are the automated messages in their email. So make sure your parents are downloading the app and the messages will reach them as well. Communication via timelines in dental monitoring. So this is the old braces timeline at the top, and then the new and improved scanning timeline at the bottom. The improved visual messaging that we get helps really reduce chair time and enhance the patient experience. When it's ortho rush hour and your office is very busy, it takes a lot of time to search back through the treatment card to look for things like how many times have you discussed poor hygiene and how many broken brackets have we had along the way? How many times are they late for scans? Like, you don't have time for all the searching. So DM putting it all in this new timeline, the visual communication we receive is really where the action is. The old timeline only let us know when the patient scanned. Like, you could see, okay, they sent in a scan and that's kind of it. And then you would have to go searching for that information when the patient was in the chair. But with the new timeline, when I sit down chairside and I see this timeline on the monitor, I know I don't have to talk to the patient about diet restrictions or breakage. She has a fully green bar under her braces timeline, and there's really no issue. She takes good care of her braces. But she needs to focus better on brushing and submitting scans regularly. So I know from a quick glance at her timeline how I need to communicate with her regarding areas where she can improve and where I can commend her on the areas where she rocks. This is a different patient's timeline. This patient's doing an amazing job with his braces. When I see a timeline like this, which is mostly green dots and very little red, we're not going to discuss his braces. We're going to discuss the summer lacrosse season or what he got on his SATs. We're not going to talk about the one time he had broken power chain. The visual communication from the timeline saves a ton of time by not having to scroll back and search for things to support why your patient is still in treatment, to say, well, we talked about brushing 1,000 times, or, you know, we really need you to send in your scans regularly. By seeing more green than red, I know I can talk to the patient about what is important to them that day. I can ask them what's going on in their life and not have to ask for better cooperation. And I think that enhances the patient experience, and it makes our conversations more personalized when they are in the office. Okay, on to goals. Goals with dental monitoring really changed the way I treat my braces patients and made me realize the benefit of monitoring my braces patients and the flexibility that it could really bring to our schedule. Goals track precise milestones your patients are going through, vertical, AP, transverse. By setting goals, it has eliminated a lot of the checks. We set the goal, we give it a time frame, and the AI will notify us if the goal has been met or not. And then we can act accordingly. Which goals will you track? A few of my favorites are passive arch wires. When the patients start treatment, we set their next appointment for 12 to 16 weeks for their first retie. If the goal for passive arch wire is reached before that timeline of 12 to 14 weeks, we bring them in sooner to change their wire. Class 1 canine, this eliminates a lot of those extra visits to check elastics. We set the goal, and if the goal is reached or not in that time frame, my DMC will assign the notification to me. Another great one is space closure, either anterior or extraction space. If all spaces are closed, either anterior or extraction, and knowing when it happens, you can bring your patient back. So if you're closing extraction space with a closing loop and the space is closed within your time frame, you know you can bring them in and get them out of that wire. If it's not closed within the time frame, then you know you can bring them back in to reactivate your mechanics. By setting goals, you can know in real time when to schedule the appointment. We don't have to guess when the activation is going to wear out or guess how many weeks it will take for the desired outcome. Since the time requirement to reach certain goals is going to be different for every patient, you can treat the patient when the patient's ready for the next adjustment. This eliminates wasted chair time and optimizes treatment for the patient. So where do we find the goals? The goals are on the left-hand side of your patient card under the notifications to review tab. If you click the little drop-down button, you can see any of the goals that you might want to track for each patient. This is an example of the goals that we set up for our LightForce patients, and this is the list that will show up down that left-hand side of the screen when I click the little drop-down. For this patient, out of these goals, we only have a class 1 canine selected right now, and passive arch wires is activated at this time. I don't think not every goal needs to be tracked for every patient at every interval. So we pick and choose what we want to track for each patient and change it as necessary throughout treatment. You can see this patient reached her passive arch wire goal and that we're still tracking class 1 canines. And our time frame is 1 week left. So if the goal is not reached in 1 week, my DMC will assign me the notification, and then I'll decide if we bring her in for her next appointment or we push her out to continue the current elastics, or do we switch her to a stronger elastic? If the goal is reached, again, the DMC will assign the notification to me, and I'll decide, are we cutting her hours to nighttime only? Are we bringing her in for something else? And we schedule the appropriate appointment based on her progress. Where do you set up your goals? So to set up your goals, you can go to the configuration tab on the dashboard and go under team instructions, and there's your goals. You can set up your practice preferences, or you can reach out to your ISP and have their expertise involved in helping you set that up. So what's my workflow for my LightForce patients when combining them with dental monitoring? The workflow for a new patient start is once they sign the contract, patients receive their oral hygiene kit, their scan box, and they go on a hygiene protocol. They take their first scan in the office that day, and then weekly until we deliver their braces, so we can monitor their hygiene until the bonding appointment. By going over oral hygiene instructions and scanning instructions prior to delivery, it shortens our delivery appointment and adds back more production time in our schedule. Also, since there's no start in the chair anymore, when the contract gets signed, the patient gets to leave with something. And I feel like that creates value and improves the patient experience. They can't leave with their braces today, but they do get to leave with their brushing kit and their scan box and start their treatment journey with remote monitoring. And it opens up more production time in our schedule. At the bonding appointment, we bond all brackets, bite ramps, and we start elastic wear on day 1. We switch the patient from their hygiene protocol to a light force protocol. And we set goals for class 1 canine molars and passive arch wires. For me, the time frame for class 1 goals is patient specific and is communicated chairside. Because if I just set a blanket time frame for 3 months and it'll take the patient longer to reach that goal, then I'm going to receive a goal that the notification that the goal wasn't met. And if I didn't expect it to be met in that time frame, it just creates work for me because the DMC is going to assign me that notification and I have to review it and either reset the time frame or just let it ride out that it's late. So I try to assign realistic time frame goals for each class 1 goal based on the patient's malocclusion. As for passive wires, as I said before, the patient will leave with an appointment for a retie in 12 to 16 weeks. And if the wires are passive sooner, then we bring them in sooner to get them out of that initial wire. For the rest of the workflow, I think it's really based on the goals and it's appointment and patient specific. So if I'm closing extraction space, then I'm going to set that goal. Am I using a closing loop or retraction springs or this power chain? If my spaces are closed before I estimate the need for another activation, I'll be notified that the spaces are closed and we can adjust the next appointment accordingly. But set the goals when the need arises. If I'm not closing spaces yet, I don't set that goal because I don't want unnecessary notifications that it's not been met when I'm not even working towards that goal right now. So insights. Insights is up next. Let's discuss how your systems will change. The Insights tab is at the far right on your DM dashboard. And once you click Insights, it will take you to your practice statistics homepage where you'll see top data for your practice. Insights provides internal communication and feedback to the practice in the form of data. This data can then be used to, 1, optimize practice workflow with regards to procedures, materials, or staff. Or 2, you can improve external communication to your patients via timeframe messaging. The data collection is automated. There is no additional workload created for you or your staff, and no special coding to use. No additional input is needed. So let's talk about using the data to optimize practice workflow. All of my braces patients are light force, and the data is showing that at this time, 95% of our disengaged arch wires were on the lower 5s and lower 6s, and that 70% of our missing ties were on the lower 5s. When I first started looking at insights for my practice, that arch wire disengagement in the previous 365 days showed that we had 21 occurrences, and they were mainly at the lower 5s and lower 6s, as you can see from the bar graph. And by looking at the distribution per scan, we had the most occurrences in the early part of treatment, and then the problem almost goes away. And that makes sense because when we're in early flexible wires and there are rotations and deflections, it's easy to lose a tie on the 5 and then the wire pops out. And as we level and align and get into larger wires, then it's not usually a problem any longer. So we began to use a ligature tie on the lower 5s in our early arch wires, especially if there was a rotation or a deflection. And in 30 days following that protocol change, we saw only 2 occurrences of arch wire disengagement, and they were at the lower right 7. By adding a wire ligature tie to the lower 5s in our early arch wires, especially when rotations or deflections were present, not only did we greatly reduce the occurrence of the problem, which was the lost ties, but we eliminated the extended treatment time caused by the secondary problem, which was disengaged arch wires. Without that communication from insights, I think it's difficult to see your blind spots. I think it's hard to know, is it a fact or is it a feeling? Do I think all my patients are losing their lower 5 ties, or is it really happening? And insights can track the data, communicate that through the practice dashboard, and then any practice can decide what they want to do with it. And I think it can greatly improve your systems and help your patients stay on track for treatment time. The second way we choose to take advantage of insights is by using the internal communication of data to improve external communication to our patients. And we do that through time frame messaging. Knowing where the patients struggle is important. We watch pretty closely and constantly try to pick up information on how we can help our patients. And the yellow bars are showing us that our patients really struggle a lot with their front teeth, which I find shocking because they're the easiest teeth to access with a toothbrush. And they're the ones that ruin the smile when the decalcification happens. In the last 365 days, we had 103 occurrences of noticeable amount of plaque and food and garbage. Not a slight amount, a noticeable amount. And knowing when they struggle, right? The data in the distribution per scan shows that in the first 3 months, hygiene is pretty bad. They get a lot of notifications in those first 13 weeks, and then it gets better. And that makes sense too, because brushing around braces is an adventure. And the teeth are sore in the beginning. And so their brushing times are shorter and not very aggressive. Knowing the where and the when of the struggle allowed us to set up time frame messages to go out to the patients to remind them to focus their brushing where they need to, and to be able to remind them in a timely fashion. So we know the first 2 weeks are tough because everything's sore. So we decided to send out our first time frame message at 3 weeks. And it says, hey there, we just want to remind you to focus on brushing, especially around your upper and lower front teeth. Those front teeth can accumulate plaque easily. Make sure you brush on the top and the bottom, and don't forget to brush before you scan. Thanks a lot. The best part is no one has to remember to send out these messages. It's automated, so it reduces workflow and improves quality of care for our patients by communicating the message in a timely fashion. We saw a spike in the hygiene notification at 4 weeks. So that's when our second time frame message goes out. And this one says, hello there, this is your friendly reminder for when you brush your teeth. Be sure you angle your toothbrush to clean the top and bottom of each bracket. Food and plaque can stay up there if we don't brush them away. They get another reminder at 8 weeks. Oh, hi, it's us again. Brushing twice a day is super important to keep your teeth healthy. Remember that brushing helps keep the parts behind the brackets clean too. Don't forget the back of the teeth and those and behind the molars. And then we send the last automated message at 12 weeks. It just reminds them too about brushing, but also diet restrictions, because now they're feeling bold. Their teeth aren't sore anymore, so they're going for the Skittles. It says, hey, just a reminder, now that we're a few months into treatment, hard, sticky, chewy foods are not great for your braces. The sticky, chewy foods can get caught and make it hard to brush it all away. So in the 30 days after we implemented timeframe messaging, you can see we're still pretty far from perfect, but the occurrence of the notification has decreased from 8% down to 4.7%. And as more messages are released, we're hoping the numbers should continue to improve. The distribution per scan of these notifications is also less frequent. And then one last comment on insights. My practice has tried to improve our data by interpreting where we can be more accurate in what we're collecting. This slide represents our data for broken brackets for the year prior to January 2023. And it tells me that we had 18 broken brackets. which is incredibly low. So I thought, wow, these brackets are amazing. These light force brackets they never break, because all of our light force patients are scanning. Do they occasionally miss a scan, or are some patients uncooperative? Of course they are, but not enough to suppress the real numbers. Is the AI missing broken brackets? It's doubtful. I mean, it could happen, but it would be pretty rare. Again, not enough to suppress the real number of broken brackets. And then my disillusioned self later realized that these 18 broken brackets were only the ones that were broken at the time that a scan was taken. Maybe the patient knew they had a broken bracket, or maybe they didn't know. They were alerted by the AI, they had a broken bracket, they called the office, they came in and had it repaired. But what about the broken brackets that were not captured in the scan? What about the bracket that broke after they took their scan? They self-reported it to the office. They came in and had the bracket repaired before they took their next scan. Well, those brackets weren't going into my data. So they weren't being accounted for because there was never a broken bracket present during a scan. So in order to try to get accurate data for our broken light force brackets, we're now trying to capture every broken bracket. So now, if the bracket broke after their most recent scan, that they either self-reported it to the office that they had a broken bracket, we reset their scan date to today, which is the day of the call. And we repair the broken bracket at a future date, which is not today. So that broken bracket is captured by AI and present in my insights. If the broken bracket appointment needs to be scheduled the same day as the call because Johnny's at school and I need to bring him right after school because it's bothering him and we have to get to baseball, football, soccer practice, and we're not going home to scan, then we have the patient scan in the office prior to repairing the broken bracket. And so in that way, it will be picked up by the AI and accounted for in our practice insights. So how did our data change? Well, we obviously have more broken brackets, but now I can see a trend developing. And what I see when I look at the table is we have more broken sixes than any other bracket and more on the right side than the left. So by evaluating more accurate data, we can evaluate our processes. Is the assistant right-handed? Yes. Is there an isolation issue on the right side? Maybe. Or is it procedural? Should we ask for a separate IDB tray for all our sixes like we get on our sevens? Our sevens don't break much. Should we ask for separate trays? Maybe. Or is it a function of the bracket design? Do these brackets have a larger profile than the other brackets? Yes, they do. Do patients chew more on their right side than the left? I don't know. You guys, the point is that we have more accurate data now for this notification, and we can choose how we want to manage our data to make changes, because broken brackets is more appointments and longer treatment time. So my practice is really a little hyper about focusing on this. And I feel like now we found a way to improve our data. So we're acting on like real data and not, 18 broken brackets. Okay, lastly, how will your practice transform? Unlocking the powerful combination of digital braces and remote monitoring. Where will you see the biggest changes? You'll see fewer patients in the office, thereby opening up your schedule for increased production. Patients can be put on longer appointment intervals by setting goals in DM, and this will help maximize the efficiency of your digital bracket system without wasting unnecessary time between appointments. You will know before they show. Meaning, if there's a broken bracket or the patient's ready for a wire change because your goal was met, or they have a deflected wire, you know before they come in. And knowing why the patient is coming in allows for less stress on the office staff and the assistants, because the chair is set for the proper appointment and the office runs on time. And running on time is a gift to the patients, the staff, and the doctor. You will enhance the patient experience by knowing about problems that the patient is experiencing in real time. If there's a problem with hygiene, or they don't know how to hook their rubber bands, they're hooking them incorrectly, or if there's a broken bracket, you now have a crystal ball to see what you previously did not know until they were in the chair. Your cost allocation will change. There will be an increase in lab costs, but a decrease in staffing costs. These slides were loaned to DM by Chris Benson for this webinar. And in 2020, he said digital braces were only 1% of the orthodontic market. It's projected to account for 25% of the market by 2030. We're used to seeing staffing costs and lab fees both go up as we grow and become more profitable. But with the projected growth in digital solutions, the costs in these categories do not both increase. It's projected that while lab fees will increase, there will be a proportional decrease in staffing costs. There was recently an article published in the JCO about the clinical efficiency of LightForce braces. So Dr. Waldman Garvin et al. Came to the conclusion that at the end of treatment, the differences between LightForce and conventional bracket groups in terms of the length of treatment and the number of scheduled emergency and total appointments were all statistically significant. The LightForce group's average treatment time was 45% shorter than the conventional group's treatment time. So you may read this article and ask yourself, if I can finish treatment time sooner with LightForce brackets, why do I need dental monitoring with this group of patients? Because the use of remote monitoring is not just about finishing treatment in less time. Benefits also include enhanced patient experience, improved communication with patients, parents, and referring doctors, the ability to see problems in real time and address them in a timely fashion, and reduce stress and overall chaos for office staff and the doctor. Win-win is a belief in the third alternative. It's not your way or my way. It's a better way, a higher way, by Stephen Covey. So it's not about digital braces or remote monitoring. It's the combination of the two. It's a better way. It's a higher way. The combination of digital treatment systems with remote monitoring is a better way for our patients. It's a better way for the doctor, and it's a better and a higher way for the patients and our practices as a whole. I want to thank you for your time today. I'll turn it back over to Sean for questions, but if we don't get to all of them, feel free to email me and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Very good as always. And of course, a reminder, if you have a question, you can add it into either the chat window or the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your Zoom window. If it's not there, if you scroll down, it should pop up there for you. We did have a couple of questions that came in throughout your presentation. Two of them actually right towards the end, because this is what you were referencing. But if you're ready, the first question was from Thomas. And I know you are a digital practice and use custom brackets, and you referenced that 12 to 16 week typical interval window, but does dental monitoring really further impact your ability to extend those appointment intervals, and how far are you comfortable extending?
Okay, so for my aligner patients, I will massively overreact to scheduling appointments. If they have 40 aligners, they can have 40 aligners and go on, and I'll monitor remotely. But with the braces patients, I guess how far I'm willing to extend a treatment interval probably depends on my mechanics. And, your timing can only be as long as your elastomeric ties are going to hold up. So if I do a regular retie and I say, see you in 6 months, that patient's coming back probably with no ties left on their braces. So I think for a retie, I'm comfortable at probably 12 to 16 weeks. But prior to remote monitoring, I would retie braces in 6 to 8. I think if you're closing space and you use a retraction coil, I would probably let the patient leave without a future appointment and monitor them as to when that goal was reached. And if it was reached before I set the time frame, I can bring them back and get the springs off. Or if they don't reach the goal, then I know I can reactivate it. So I think there are some things that I'll just let goals inform me. And then there are some things that I will only let get so far. So I think it just depends on your mechanics and what you're really doing at that time. Like with braces, I felt like before dental monitoring, with like my metal braces before Light Force, everybody came back every 6 to 8 weeks, and that was predictable. The assistants didn't need me to come and tell them when the patient was coming back. But now with monitoring and with a customized bracket, no two patients are the same. They go up to the front desk, and some of them are like, "Peace out, ladies," and they leave with no appointment. And some are coming back in 8 weeks, and some are coming back in 16 weeks. And it's specific to what we're doing.
Got it. So really dental monitoring just allows for all those variables to be managed.
Exactly.
Way,
and it keeps the eye on whatever my goal is at that time.
Got it. The second question is actually to kind of touched on toward the end there, your article, and this question, is showing a 45% reduction in treatment time for Force alone, and 14.2 months versus 26 months for conventional mechanics. But do you see even a shorter treatment time than the 14 months that was reported by using dental monitoring?
Okay, so the article is referring to a 45% decrease in treatment time over their traditional metal braces. So I never monitored any metal braces. I only ever monitored my Light Force brackets. And our last consecutive 70 plus Light Force D-bonds have finished treatment time in 13.6 months, I think. So okay. My treatment time is a little less than what you just quoted. I think you said 14.2. Is it statistically significant? I don't know. But I can also tell you that I wasn't really finishing cases in 26 months. I think our braces cases were taking probably between 20 and 30. I spent a lot of time on finishing and detailing. And so do you have a calculator? I don't have a calculator, but what's 45% faster than 28 months is going to be more than that 14.2 months that went with 26. So my point is, for me, my Light Force and monitoring patients are finishing faster than the 45% less treatment time than my metal braces were finishing pre-Light Force DM.
Okay.
We were, maybe it would have been like 15 or 16 months, but I'm seeing patients finish in 13.6. Is that statistically significant? I don't know. But it is shorter than what math I came to in reviewing, like in doing the math on my braces patients when I read the article. So yeah. I think monitoring helps because you get to see problems when they happen. Like if you have a patient with a broken bracket and you have an extended treatment interval of 16 weeks and the patient is clueless and didn't know it was broken, your shorter treatment time just got longer.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know I read the article myself, and I know it touched on that, but it also kind of in a separate table outlined, here was the number of emergency visits. Here was the number of broken brackets or lost brackets for Light Force versus conventional, and there was significantly less in each category. But I also thought, well, even the number of emergencies and the number of broken brackets are going to be reduced if you're monitoring. And of course, if the patient is scanning and is compliant, but if all things are acting the way they should or the way they're subscribed, then a lot of those extra things will be eliminated or reduced as well. So
win-win.
Yep. And I think, just even if you think 13.6 or 14.2, whatever that number is, go back 20 years ago. And if you told orthodontists, like, you could be finishing all your braces patients in, 14 months or less. You'd have been laughed out of the room. Not possible. It's voodoo magic. Thank you for that. The third question that came in was from Anonymous, and I always say Anonymous always comes up with the greatest questions. But reducing visits and increasing intervals between those visits seems quite feasible with great scanning compliance. But how do you manage these patients who are inconsistent or non-compliant with providing scans as they're instructed?
Okay, so I love this question because I feel like, no disrespect to Anonymous, but I feel like when people ask about what do you do when your patient doesn't cooperate with scanning, I kind of feel like, well, what do you do with all your other patients who don't cooperate? Like, we have non-cooperators all the time, patients who don't wear elastics or brush or what have you. But at least with the scanning, we have a way to know who they are. So we can go to our dashboard and look at everybody who's late for a scan. And then we harass. So my staff will change their scan date to today. So if you were supposed to scan 2 days ago and you didn't scan, they change your scan date to today. So you get another notification that we need a scan. And if they don't send it tomorrow, they get their scan date changed to that date. We need a scan. And they do this over and over and over until the patient sends a scan. If the patient turns off the notifications because we annoyed them, you can also see that. And then calls go to the house and we tell mom, we're sorry, Johnny's 3 weeks late for a scan. We're going to have to see him in the office because we're not really sure what's happening. And then I will annoy those patients with, if you're not going to scan, you have to come in. So you're going to come in probably every 4 weeks. And every time I see you, we're going to talk about how, if you'd be willing to scan, we can, we won't have to see you for probably 12 weeks. Do you want us to, you want to reset your scan date, or should we see you in 4 weeks? And usually the moms are like, reset it, reset it, reset it, reset it. We don't have time for this. So that's how we handle the non-scanners. But if they don't, hey, we're there. We're in the office. I'm here all week. So you can come in because I have room in my schedule because of all the patients I don't have to bring in. So that's how we handle the non-cooperators. I mean, we know how to treat patients without remote monitoring. So if a patient won't scan, we see you in the office.
Right. And I know that, your team does a very good job. Your non-compliance numbers are very low relative, relative to the average in the country. So I know that goes back to that initial patient education and setting those right expectations and communicating the value to patients. And I know you and your team both do a great job of doing that. So,
and that's really kudos to my team because I don't put my hands on that. And when they're chasing patients down for a scan, they're chasing them. Like I said, hats off to them.
Right. That's outstanding. And of course, you mentioned the newer timeline design.
I love it.
When you do have those patients in, as you said, you don't have to dig back to see, well, how compliant have they been? It's right there.
And you know what? It's really great too, because you always have the mom, or we used to with metal braces, not so much with Life Force, who wants to tap her foot. Are we almost done here? Like, when are we getting the braces off? And so with that new timeline, it's very easy. You can hover over the red part and it'll say, he's had 35 broken brackets, or he hasn't brushed his teeth in 10 weeks or whatever. He's had so many poor hygiene remarks. So it's really easy. That data is in your face and I don't have to sit there and scroll through my treatment card going 1, 2, 3. Oh, he's had 10 broken brackets. So it's really easy to answer. Well, we expected him to be done in 12 months, but we've had a lot of inconsistency with oral hygiene and he's not scanning, so we can't help him. And, he breaks a lot of stuff.
Right.
So at least that data is right there and it's a quick reply. It doesn't look like I'm searching for the answer as I scroll back through treatment notes. And they always ask it at ortho rush hour when you don't have time.
Sure. And you mentioned this also, of course, but with the goal setting, when you set that goal of, whether it's 12 or 14 weeks for the class 1 canine correction, and you're doing that with a purpose. Like I believe within 14 weeks this should be done, but at 14 weeks you get that notification that this goal is not yet corrected. You see the visual of how far off you are still. Like, that is the evidence, of course, to, Have you been wearing elastics or have you not? Like,
And
it's
at
no,
some point, you do have to bring them in to check, because as they get closer to class 1, sometimes their scan depends on how far they retracted the scan box. Like Scan Assist is helping us with that. So we're really seeing the buccal segments from the buccal and not from the front. But early on, when they're wearing elastics, it's very easy to see, not there yet, you're not there yet, you're not there yet. But as you're coming closer to dial it in, sometimes, you do need to check that at the retie. I don't bring them in an extra visit just to check elastics, but it's reduced a lot of check appointments.
got it. Another question was just submitted, so thank you for that. One of the biggest questions is, how much, if any, have you raised fees to incorporate Lightforce and DM? Assuming with a majority financing monthly, that they're willing to pay the additional monthly dollars for that value. Your thoughts?
I charge. I don't give either away. So we take insurance, and the insurance fee is for metal braces. So we have an equal increase if they do aligners or if they do Lightforce. And I think our increase is $600. And then we charge an additional $250 as a technology fee. And that covers the scan box, and it covers probably the first 5 or 6 months of the scanning. And then at that point, if they don't scan, they didn't waste my money. They wasted $250 of their own money. But those charges are broken out. I use Ortho5, so it states like, this is the overall fee. We added on this much for Lightforce. We added on this much for technology. We charge this for your brushing kit. There's your insurance discount. Here's your insurance benefit, and here's your out-of-pocket expense. I don't have the problem of somebody saying, well, we don't want to pay more for Lightforce, so give us metal braces, because I don't do them. We took every metal, everything out of the office, typodonts, any pictures on the website, anything that showed metal braces came down, went away, got put in a drawer. And, really, you can do Invisalign or you can do Lightforce, or I guess you could have a nice day. It was really nice meeting you. Because we tell our patients, I'm going to treat you with the latest technology on the market. I'm not going to waste your time with old school treatment modalities. And I didn't say in the beginning, but I have a bougie practice. I have a boutique style practice with a bougie clientele. So they hear that they're going to get the best treatment available, and that jives with them. So I don't get pushback. I lay it out there. This is what we're charging. And then that's that. They either take it or leave it.
And you've mentioned the technology fee in a prior presentation, I remember you saying, like, no patient has ever said no thank you. I prefer
No, I don't. No, bring us some alginate. We don't want technology. And I specifically call it a technology fee and not a dental monitoring fee, because then they can say, no, we're not going to do that. Take that off. And in my office, that's how we treat patients. Every patient is on monitoring, so I'm not taking it off. If you're resisting, then maybe this isn't the practice for you.
Thank you, Alex. Just another question, and this will be from your experience, of course, because we don't have the behind the scenes look into the dental monitoring engineer and algorithm creation station. But from your experience, how accurate is DM in diagnosing small spaces remaining?
I don't know that answer. I don't know that answer, because I don't typically set, I don't rely on that, on space closure, to tell me when their braces are ready to come off. So, for example, if it's the end of treatment and I got class 1, ideal overbite, ideal overdate, all spaces closed, that patient will come in with their braces on and get scanned for retainers. So I have a chance to put my eyes on it before I would schedule a debond. So I'm not really using that goal in a sense that I rely super heavily on it, because I'm going to take the braces off at the next visit. I'm going to see the patient again.
Mhm.
A lot of my patients have bite ramps in there that they have to come off before I scan them for retainers. So they would come in, if all the spaces are truly closed, we take the bite ramps off and scan for retainers. So I don't know how accurate it is to like a millimeter of space closure. I don't know.
Oh,
I
right.
would
And
say
I'm
it's
sure
very
there-
accurate with noticing broken brackets, missing ties, stuff like that. It'll pick up a tiny bit of recession. It'll let me know if there's an aphthous ulcer. But as far as space closure, I don't pay that much attention to it because I don't have to hang my hat on it and say, okay, come in, you're going to get your braces off because all your space is closed. And then you get them in the chair and go, or is it? Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't.
Great. When you set that goal for space flow anterior or posterior, you're notified, hey, looks like the patient has reached that goal. You've got the visual because it's
Yeah.
being produced as a result of the scan. So
Provided that the patient gives you like a full side scan, which again, Scan Assist is helping work out.
for sure. I think we have time for just one more question, again from Anonymous. Had evidence with referral growth with current or new referrals because of the digital approach. I'm thinking that hygienists will value this tremendously.
We used to have one office, we do a hygiene study club and we would get a lot of referrals from that office's hygienists. And all of a sudden we started to get referrals from a different practice, a practice that's never sent us patients before. And we learned that one of the first practices hygienists now work there. So yes, hygienists love to know that you're following hygiene. And quite frankly, I think the dentists are mildly horrified to see some of the pictures that we send them in the same way that I was mildly horrified because I thought, they know I'm looking. They didn't brush before they took the scan. Like they thought that was okay. And then to think about what if that looks like that every day until the day before they come see you when they actually brush their teeth. So I think the hygienists love it. I don't have any accurate answer on how our referral patterns or the quantity of referrals has changed, but I do know that we get a lot of referrals out of the hygiene chair.
Great to hear. And I would expect that to be the case, but it's always great to hear that it's actually what's happening day to day. Well, in the interest of time, I want to say thank you so much for your insightful presentation and responses to these questions, Dr. Gostovich.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to everyone who submitted a question or comment. We do apologize if we were unable to respond to every question in the time allowed, but we've documented those last couple that came in, and we can respond to those offline. So I know I speak for Dr. Tara Gostovich, as well as everyone behind the scenes when I say that you've given us all the gift of your time, for which we are very grateful. Please do plan to join us for our next scheduled DM Connect webinar, which you see on your screen, Friday, August 18th with Dr. Frank Sharp. And until then, have a blessed remainder of your day wherever you are in the world, and be well.